At around 1:30 a.m. on March 26, 2024, the central sections and the three closest sections on the northeastern side of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, located in the Baltimore metropolitan area of Maryland, collapsed when a massive container ship hit one of its supports. 2 individuals were rescued from the river. One was unharmed, while the other was taken to a hospital in serious condition. 6 workers who were maintaining the bridge at the time disappeared. 2 bodies were found, and the other 4 are still missing. The collapse has caused a major obstacle for most ships going to and from the Port of Baltimore. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland described the incident as a global crisis, impacting nearly 10,000 jobs and hundreds of thousands of travelers who use the bridge in their commute. The closure of the waterway is resulting in estimated losses of $15 million per day. The question everyone is asking is simple. What exactly happened to trigger a 1,200 feet bridge to collapse with such violence, seemingly out of nowhere, in the middle of the night? The answer lies in the MV Dali, a Neo-Panamax container ship, with quite a complicated history. Let's dive in. The Francis Scott Key Bridge was a large steel arch-shaped bridge that stretched across the Patapsco River. It was one of the longest bridges in the United States, opening in 1977 and spanning about 1.6 miles from Hawkins Point in Baltimore to Sollers Point in Dundalk, Maryland. This bridge was a crucial part of Interstate 695, a road that goes around Baltimore and was heavily used by around 35,000 vehicles every day. The Patapsco River is a vital waterway connecting the Port of Baltimore to the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. This port was very busy, handling almost 450,000 passengers and more than 50 million tons of foreign cargo, valued at $80 billion in 2023. It was the second largest port in the US for coal and the leading port for lightweight vehicles for many years, dealing with nearly 850,000 cars and trucks in 2023. The MV Dali, the vessel under the microscope, was a large container ship registered in Singapore and operated by Synergy Marine Group, with ownership under Grace Ocean Private Limited, also based in Singapore. It was constructed in 2015 and was approximately 980 feet long, 157 feet wide, and had a draft of about 40 feet. The ship was chartered by the Danish shipping company Maersk and had passed 2 inspections in 2023, one in Chile where a repair was made to a fuel pressure gauge, and another by the US Coast Guard in New York, where no issues were apparently found. Dali's journey began from Panama to New York, reaching New York on March 19, 2024, then proceeded to the Virginia International Gateway in Portsmouth, Virginia. Departing Virginia on March 22nd, the ship arrived in Baltimore on March 23rd. The crew on board comprised of 20 Indian nationals and 1 Sri Lankan. The main channel of water beneath the bridge was approximately 50 feet deep, while charts from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration indicated that the depth around the bridge supports was about 30 feet. When the bridge was constructed in 1977, the largest container ships could carry around 2,000 to 3,000 containers of standard size, known as 20-foot equivalent units, or TEU. However, with the completion of the Panama Canal expansion project in 2016, the capacity for container ships passing through the canal increased significantly, from 4,500 to 12,000 TEU. To accommodate these larger vessels, the Maryland Port Administration upgraded facilities, including installing new cranes and dredging the harbour. MV Dali, completed in 2015, had a capacity of 10,000 TEU and was nearly fully loaded with approximately 4,740-foot containers at the time of the collision. Although a smaller ship caused minor damage to one of the bridge's supports in 1980, former officials from the Maryland Transportation Authority revealed that the authority did not investigate the potential impact of a larger ship collision. Instead, they focused on studying potential terrorist threats following the September 11th attacks, or structural weaknesses, similar to those that led to the tragic collapse of the I-35 Mississippi River Bridge in 2007. Federal regulations aimed at safeguarding bridges from ship collisions were revised in 1991 after the collapse of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge in 1980. However, existing bridges were exempted from these regulations, including the Francis Scott Key Bridge. The Francis Scott Key was said to have lacked the advanced protective systems required by newer bridges, protective measures that may have prevented the impending collapse. At 12:44 a.m. EDT on March 26, 2024, the MV Dali departed from the Port of Baltimore, headed for Colombo, Sri Lanka, with 2 local harbour pilots on board. Shortly after, at 1:24 a.m, the ship experienced a total loss of power, blacking out and causing the vessel to drift out of the designated shipping lane. Although a backup generator kept some electrical systems running, it couldn't power the ship's engines. Recognizing the danger, the crew issued a distress call at 1:27 a.m, warning that they had lost control and a collision with the bridge was imminent. The pilots urgently requested a halt to traffic on the bridge. As the ship's lights flickered on and off, indicating electrical issues, the Maryland Department of Transportation swiftly acted on the pilot's request, stopping traffic in both directions. Moments later, at 1:28 a.m, the ship struck the southwest pier of the bridge's central span at a speed of approximately 8 knots. Prior to the collision, data showed the ship's speed at around 8.7 knots, before slowing to 6.8 knots at the time of impact. The force of the collision caused the bridge to break apart almost instantly, with sections collapsing into the water below and severing the roadway. Some parts of the bridge fell onto the ship's bow. The entire incident was captured on video, which I'm sure you've already seen. Although there were vehicles on the bridge at the time, it was initially believed that no one was inside them. Workers who were conducting maintenance on the bridge were on a break in their vehicles when the collapse occurred. Nearby residents reported feeling strong vibrations resembling an earthquake. A massive rescue operation was launched, with the Coast Guard deploying boats and a helicopter to assist. 50 divers from various public safety agencies were dispatched to search for anyone who might have fallen into the river. The Francis Scott Key Bridge's design relied heavily on its overall structure to stay intact. In simpler terms, it didn't have backup support if any part failed, making it extremely vulnerable to damage. When the ship collided with the bridge, it destroyed a crucial pier, causing the southern and central sections to collapse, which then led to the northern section collapsing as well. These collapses happened rapidly, with each part falling within seconds. Within half a minute, the main spans along with 3 others had all fallen. Interestingly, the bridge was considered to be up to code before the collapse. It did have some safeguards in place, like dolphin and fender protections meant to withstand ship impacts, but these measures turned out to be inadequate. Out of the 4,700 shipping containers on the MV Dali, 13 were damaged during the collision. 2 of these containers ended up in the water, fortunately without any hazardous materials. The ship itself suffered damage to its hull above the waterline and got stuck on the channel floor due to debris from the collapsed bridge. Despite this, it remained sealed, and initially the shipping company claimed there was no pollution directly from the ship. However, authorities later found a sheen in the water, likely from a small oil leak of about 21 gallons from the ship's bow thruster. To contain any potential pollution, authorities set up about 2,500 feet of barriers around the ship. And on March 27th, the National Transportation Safety Board launched an investigation into a hazardous material spill from breached containers aboard the MV Dali. Despite the initial belief this was unnecessary, among these containers were some of the 56 carrying around 764 tons of hazardous materials, including corrosive and flammable substances like lithium batteries, along with various Class 9 materials. A material is designated as Hazmat Class 9 if it possesses characteristics such as anesthetic, noxious, or other properties that could significantly disrupt the duties of flight crew members due to extreme annoyance or discomfort. Additionally, it includes materials meeting the criteria for elevated temperature substances, hazardous waste, or marine pollutants. At the time of the collapse, the water temperature was reported to be 47 degrees Fahrenheit, or 8 degrees Celsius. 2 individuals were rescued from the river. One was in critical condition, while the other escaped unharmed. Unfortunately, 6 members of the maintenance crew who were working on the bridge, were reported missing and are presumed to have died after the Coast Guard suspended their search.
Among them, one was from Honduras,
2 were from Guatemala, and the rest were from El Salvador and Mexico. Sonar technology detected 5 submerged vehicles, including 3 cars and a transit mixer. In the search and rescue operation, emergency services utilized drones and infrared technology. Tragically, the bodies of 2 maintenance crew members were found inside a red pickup truck. A 35-year-old Mexican citizen and a 26-year-old Guatemalan citizen. They were discovered approximately 25 feet below the bridge's midsection.
Due to the unstable debris
and the risk of further collapse, the search efforts were halted. Additionally, a 38-year-old Honduran citizen and a 49-year-old citizen of El Salvador are among those still missing. Thankfully, all crew members of the MV Dali, including the 2 pilots, were safe and didn't sustain any major injuries. Only 1 crew member suffered minor injuries and required stitches. Organizations like the Baltimore International Seafarers Center offered support to the crew members, providing amenities such as Wi-Fi hotspots as they remained on board the ship. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, launched an investigation into the collapse and immediately dispatched a team to the site. They are still expected to release a preliminary report within 2 to 4 weeks after the incident, followed by urgent safety recommendations. The full investigation may last anywhere from 12 to 24 months.
Additionally, the FBI was present at the scene,
but quickly ruled out terrorism as a cause. On March 27th, a Unified Command Joint Information Center was set up to oversee the investigation and salvage operations. This command includes members from various agencies such as the U.S. Coast Guard, Maryland Department of the Environment, Maryland Transportation Authority, Maryland State Police, and Synergy Marine, who are the primary stakeholders in the overall case. Singapore's Transport Safety Investigation Bureau and the Maritime and Port Authority sent their personnel to Baltimore to assist with the investigations as well. The NTSB team boarded the MV Dali
on the evening of March 26th
and retrieved the voyage data recorder. This device will aid investigators in constructing a timeline leading up to the collision.
Potential factors under consideration
include the possibility of contaminated fuel or the use of an improper fuel grade, causing the ship to lose power. To assess the force of the impact with the pier, the New York Times utilized equations from a book highlighting vessel and bridge collisions.
They estimated the force to be between 120 million and 230 million newtons.
To put this into perspective, Saturn V rockets produced 35 million newtons of thrust at launch, which means the MV Dali crash was possibly over 6 times stronger than a rocket ship at takeoff. In the immediate aftermath, maritime access to most of the Port of Baltimore was blocked by debris, affecting over 40 ships. Only the Trade Point Atlantic Marine Terminal remained open. Governor Wes Moore declared a state of emergency, suspending shipping to and from the port, while air traffic around the incident site was restricted. Salvage operations involved the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Navy, using heavy lift cranes to remove the submerged parts of the bridge. Over 1,100 specialists were deployed, along with various vessels and equipment. Temporary passages for work vessels were opened, with approval needed for ships to enter. The bridge closure disrupted traffic, leading to detours and delays. Baltimore's marine terminals closed, prompting shipping lines to seek alternative ports. Stellantis, General Motors, and Toyota redirected imports, affecting various terminals and causing economic concerns. Government responses included emergency legislation and offers of assistance. Investigations into the collapse are ongoing, with potential implications for future bridge designs and regulations. Insured losses were estimated to range from $1 billion to $4 billion, with the state government's insurance covering up to $350 million. The possibility of replacing the bridge raised logistical and funding considerations, with initial emergency aid provided by the federal government.
Joe Biden pledged support for reconstruction efforts,
while Secretary of Transportation urged Congress to fund a replacement bridge. Consular assistance was offered to affected families, with recognition given to Dali's crew and emergency responders for their actions during the crisis. It should be noted that the MV Dali was also part of a collision incident back in 2016. Reports from Vessel Finder and Shipwreck Log, a maritime incident archive, indicate that the Dali was leaving the port of Antwerp, Belgium, bound for Bremerhaven. During its departure, the ship's front end swung, causing its rear to scrape against the quay, resulting in significant damage to several meters of the hull. Authorities detained the vessel after the incident,
and it was brought to a dock in Belgium. Fortunately, no injuries or environmental pollutions were reported.
Weather conditions were reported to be favourable at the time, and the incident was attributed to errors made by the ship's captain and onboard pilot. Details about the crew on board during the incident remain unclear,
and the search for the remaining missing works of the present-day disaster remains ongoing, as of the time of this video. So that's it for this episode. If you want to hear more about maritime disasters and stories throughout history, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for another video.